Imagine this. The sky splits in half, thunder roars like the scream of an angry god, and from the heart of a collapsing galaxy, a flash of lightning strikes the earth. But it's not the return we hoped for. It's not the hero we remember. Thor, the god of thunder, the protector of realms, the last line of defense, is back. But something about him is off. His hammer crackles with a strange energy. His eyes glow with fury, not justice. And worst of all, he doesn't remember who he is, or who we are. If you're here wondering how Thor returned from the dead, and more importantly, what's gone terribly wrong, you're exactly where you need to be. This isn't just another Marvel theory or a casual breakdown. No, this is a story they didn't want you to hear. The story that changes everything we thought we knew about the multiverse, the gods, and the future of Earth itself. Now I know, you've probably seen 100 videos claiming they have the truth or the leak, but I want you to do something different this time. Take a breath. Feel this moment, because what you're about to experience is more than just a theory, it's a revelation. And I want you to stay with me till the end, because the answer you came looking for, why Thor is back and what's truly behind his resurrection, is going to hit harder than Jolna. You and I are going to go deep, deeper than the surface-level stuff everyone else is talking about. We're going into the mind of a god, and into the heart of something ancient, powerful, and possibly malevolent that's taken root in our universe. This is a kind of story that doesn't just entertain. It lingers, it makes you question everything, and once you know the truth, there's no going back. Let me talk to you directly. Yes, you didn't click on this video by accident. Whether you're a diehard Marvel fan, or just someone who heard that Thor is trending again after what happened last week, you're here because something inside you needs to understand. Maybe you felt it too, that something's wrong in the way Marvel's been setting the stage recently. The cryptic post-credit scenes, the sudden multiversal echoes, the strange silence about Asgard, it all adds up to something bigger. You've sensed it, haven't you? And now, with Thor's unexpected return making headlines and breaking timelines across the fandom, there's a storm coming, and we're right in the eye of it. I'm going to help you make sense of it all, but more than that, I'm going to show you what the others are missing. Stay with me, and I promise, you'll see the full picture. So what really happened when Thor died? Why did he vanish from the threads of time instead of simply falling in battle like every other god? And now that he's returned, why does the Bifrost shatter instead of open when he travels? Why do the stars dim for a moment when he speaks? And why, in the deepest corners of the quantum realm, is his name being whispered by entities even Kang fears? These aren't just random questions. These are clues. And together, we're going to follow them one by one, peeling back the layers of deception that have been building ever since the fallout of Endgame and the chaos of the multiverse saga. There's a darkness that followed Thor back from the other side, and it didn't come alone. We'll also uncover the deeper emotional core of this mystery, because this isn't just about power or timelines. It's about identity. What happens when a god forgets what it means to be worthy? What happens when the world expects a savior, but gets a stranger instead? We're going to see new faces, powerful ones. A new cosmic force is at play, manipulating memories and rewriting realities. Doctor Strange tried to stop it. Loki warned us. Even the Watcher hesitated. But it's too late now, because Thor has already crossed the threshold. And the moment he did, something ancient woke up, something that was never meant to return. So buckle up. The mystery of Thor's resurrection is only the beginning. By the end of this story, your perception of the Marvel Universe, and who really controls it, will be forever changed. And just when you think you've got it all figured out, something happens. Something impossible. Something that makes even the gods tremble. But we'll get to that, just not yet. Because before we go further, you need to see what Thor saw when he looked into the heart of the storm. And what stared back at him was not himself. After the storm came silence, unnatural, unsettling silence. When Thor emerged at the edge of a fractured cosmos, half his armor scorched, Jonah humming like it was alive, no one could understand how or why he was back. Not even Thor himself. The last confirmed sighting of the God of Thunder had been during the multiversal collapse triggered by the Incursion Wars, a cataclysm so vast it swallowed entire timelines. Thor was believed to have made the ultimate sacrifice, channeling the last remnants of cosmic storm energy to hold the collapsing realms apart while others escaped. He was honored, mourned, and then slowly faded from the narrative. Even the TVA couldn't find remnants of his time thread. But now, his standing in the ruins of New Asgard with no memory of what happened during the collapse, no recollection of how he survived, or worse, if he truly did. What's even more disturbing is how those closest to him are reacting. Valkyrie, the leader of New Asgard, seemed shaken after their reunion, her expressions guarded, her words cautious. She's been silent in interviews, offering only vague mentions of needing time to understand what's changed. Even Korg, always the optimistic voice in any crisis, reportedly hasn't been seen since Thor's return. Some insiders speculate his hiding, possibly afraid. And Jane Foster? Gone. No trace. No explanation. Some say her essence was drawn into the storm Thor came through. Others whisper she brought him back and paid the price. But no one really knows, and that's what makes this story so dangerous. Every new answer leads to 3 more questions. Then there's Thor himself. He walks like he remembers everything, but when asked about specific events, like the final battle with Kang's variants or his bond with the Guardians of the Galaxy, he blanks. Not in a confused way, but in a cold, indifferent silence, like those memories were burned out of him and replaced with something alien. His once warm charisma is gone, replaced with an intensity that feels borrowed, like a force is animating him rather than flowing through him. Witnesses who were near him when he touched down in Earth's upper atmosphere say they felt a pressure behind their eyes, like time slowed just slightly, like reality was bending around him. And this isn't exaggeration. There's verified SWORD surveillance footage that shows a ripple of energy expanding outward from Thor, freezing birds in mid-flight, bending trees away from his landing site. That's not thunder. That's something else. And just when you think you're starting to piece things together, other clues start to twist the narrative. A mysterious symbol, resembling an ancient rune that predates even Odin, has begun appearing across dimensional gateways. It was seen briefly in the quantum realm, etched into a wall Loki reportedly visited before disappearing again. That same symbol flared across Thor's hammer during a recent confrontation with what looked like a surviving variant of Kang in the ruins of a dead timeline. But here's the twist. That Khan didn't fight. He knelt, as if he recognized Thor or feared what was inside him. Multiple fan theories are now circling the idea that Thor may not have simply returned, but was sent back, not as a savior, but as a vessel. Something may have hitched a ride to the storm that brought him home. Something older than the 9 realms. Older even than Yggdrasil itself. And here's where it gets even more complicated. Dr. Strange reportedly attempted to reach Thor through a mind-link ritual, only to collapse unconscious, repeating one phrase over and over. He doesn't know what he is. The phrase has sparked a wildfire across Reddit and YouTube comment threads, with some fans believing this is tied to the Elder God theory that's been trending lately. According to the theory, Thor died and something ancient resurrected the body for its own purpose, disguising itself as a thunder god while slowly learning how to control his memories and powers. Of course, not everyone buys that. There's another theory gaining traction, one that shifts the blame closer to home. Some say Loki had a hand in this, specifically a variant of him who learned to manipulate the branches of reality. After all, Loki's silence during Thor's reappearance is deafening. He's been off the grid ever since the Time Loom collapse. If anyone has the motive and the means to tamper with a resurrection, it's him. Could this be his final trick? A desperate attempt to protect his brother from a threat we don't yet understand by altering who he is completely? Or did he unleash something far worse by tampering with divine forces that were never meant to be touched? No matter which direction you lean, Thor as a possessed weapon, Loki as a desperate architect of chaos, or a multiversal force rewriting gods to fit its purpose, the one thing that remains constant is this. Nothing adds up. The signs are all there, but they refuse to line up neatly. Every piece of information is like a shard of broken glass, reflecting part of the truth, but cutting deeper the more you try to assemble it. And just when it seems like we're about to get an answer, something new shatters the theory entirely. Because last night, something happened that changes everything. A portal opened over a classified SWRD facility. Thor stepped through, but when the surveillance team zoomed in, they saw 2 Thors, identical, standing side by side, and one of them whispered, "That's not me," as Thor stood there, staring at his doppelganger. The atmosphere crackled with energy that felt too heavy to breathe in. For a moment, neither spoke. The world seemed to hold its breath. And for the first time in his return, Thor's eyes betrayed uncertainty. The second figure, though identical in every way, felt wrong. The look in his eyes was cold, calculating, like he was seeing through Thor instead of to him. It was a split second before the figure whispered, "That's not me," and before Thor could respond, the doppelganger vanished. The portal collapsed. And just like that, it was over, or so it seemed. But that moment of truth, if we could even call it that, opened a new door. A door we shouldn't have opened. The next day, all evidence of the second Thor's presence disappeared. All footage, all reports. The SWRD facility surveillance system was completely wiped, and every officer involved in the incident was either transferred or silenced. At first, it seemed like an administrative oversight. But the more we dug, the more the hole started to widen. Someone wanted this investigation to end. And when I say someone, I don't mean some low-level agent trying to keep their job. This was much bigger than that. This was orchestrated. As I tried to piece together fragments, something even more unsettling came to light. A former ally of Thor's, someone who had always been by his side, someone who had fought alongside him in the darkest hours, had suddenly gone off the radar. Lady Sif, her disappearance wasn't even mentioned in the official records. The truth was buried under layers of misinformation. But my sources, some who'd worked in the shadows of the Asgardian courts, whispered that she had been seen speaking with someone we didn't expect, and not in the way you'd expect a friend to talk. It was subtle, but enough to raise alarms. Lady Sif wasn't the only one who had gone rogue, either. It appeared that other Asgardian figures who had sworn loyalty to Thor, even those closest to him, had started to pull away. The longer Thor remained on Earth, the more distant they became. But why? Was there something they knew about Thor's resurrection that he didn't? Were they protecting him from a truth they didn't want him to find? And then there was the strange behavior from some of Thor's old enemies. A few weeks ago, a new faction of Kree appeared in the Outer Rim. Normally, a Kree presence on Earth would be alarming, but this time they were different. They weren't trying to conquer or manipulate. They seemed scared. Fear was written across their faces, and they spoke of a dark return. I tried to reach out to one of the Kree ambassadors, but he disappeared without a trace before I could get any answers. The entire encounter felt wrong, like they knew something we didn't. And the worst part? The last thing I heard him mutter before vanishing was, "The storm is already here, and it's wearing his face." As things began to escalate, someone who I thought I could trust came forward with a warning. It was strange seeing the once loyal agent, who had helped me gather information, standing in front of me, pale and shaking. He looked like he had seen something that shattered his world, and in some ways, I think he had. His voice was low when he spoke, barely a whisper, as if he feared someone might be listening. "Stop," he said, almost pleading. "You're digging too deep. Thor is what you think he is, and neither is the storm. It's not the way it looks. The truth will only destroy everything." He handed me a small encrypted data chip before looking around nervously and vanishing into night. But that chip, when I finally managed to decrypt it, was full of classified data, showing something I couldn't comprehend at first. The data pointed to a hidden event, a catastrophic event that happened years ago, long before the battle with Thanos, when Thor was still a young prince. It showed an accident, a failed ritual in the Asgardian vaults, something Thor had been unknowingly involved in. The ritual was supposed to strengthen the gods, but instead it triggered a ripple, a chain of events that affected the entire multiverse. That's where it all began, and no one, not even Thor, realized the consequences. The truth was buried in the deepest vaults of Asgard, sealed away to protect everyone, including Thor, from knowing the dark past that had followed him ever since. Now, the more I dug into this forgotten history, the more I began to realize the depth of the conspiracy. Thor's resurrection wasn't just a fluke. It wasn't a miracle. It was planned, and it was no accident. But who was behind it? Who had the power to bring back a god from the dead, alter timelines, and manipulate the very fabric of existence? And what had they wanted with Thor in the first place? Every answer only raised more questions. Who was controlling the storm Thor had walked out of? Who had orchestrated his return? I had no idea, but the clues were starting to point to something far more dangerous than a simple resurrection gone wrong. And just as I thought I was about to make sense of it all, I received a final message, sent from an anonymous source. It was a video recorded in a dark, unfamiliar place. In it, I saw Thor, but not the Thor we know. This version was different, darker, more calculating. And as the camera zoomed in, the figure turned and looked directly into the lens. The words he spoke sent a chill down my spine. You think you know the truth, but it's already too late. You've been watching the wrong storm. As the video ended, the screen faded to black, and for a moment, everything felt still, too still. The figure in the footage had been Thor, but not the Thor I knew. His eyes weren't filled with the same warmth and passion they once held. No, this version was colder, more calculating. I sat there, staring at the screen, trying to make sense of what I had just witnessed. And that's when I heard it. My phone buzzed on the table, breaking the silence. It was a message, but not from a source I recognized. The message simply read, "You've been warned. You're too close to the truth. Leave it alone before it's too late." The sender's number was blocked, and I couldn't trace it back. I felt a chill run down my spine. Whoever had sent this wasn't playing games. It was a direct threat, and it hit me like a punch to the gut. I wasn't just investigating a god's return anymore. I was in the crosshairs of something far more sinister, something much bigger than I had realized. I had no choice but to reach out to someone who might help, someone I trusted implicitly. Jane Foster had been a vital part of Thor's story for years. Not only did she share a history with him, but she had insight into the Asgardian realm that most people couldn't even begin to understand. I reached out to her, hoping she would be able to offer some clarity in the chaos that was unfolding. But when I called her, she didn't answer. Instead, I received an encrypted voicemail, a brief, fragmented message. "You're not safe. They're watching you. Trust no one, not even Thor." The message cut off abruptly, and that was it. My heart raced as the walls seemed to close in around me. Why would she say that? Was she in danger too? And why would she suggest that I couldn't trust Thor? This wasn't just a mysterious warning anymore. It was a call for help. And something told me that the answer to everything, the true danger that lay ahead, was tied to Jane's involvement with Thor, her connection to his past, and her mysterious disappearance after his resurrection. But just as I thought I was getting closer to uncovering the bigger picture, something else happened. A new piece of evidence surfaced, one that contradicted everything I thought I knew. The encrypted data chip I had received earlier. Remember that mysterious warning I was given about the past event in Asgard? Well, as I dug deeper into it, I realized that the event I had uncovered wasn't the only one hidden away. There was another file, one that was far more disturbing, one that had been locked away in an even more secure vault, a vault that only a handful of people could access. And what was in that file made my blood run cold. It was an old journal entry from Thor himself, written long before he had become the god we all knew. In it, Thor confessed something I never expected. He had participated in a forbidden ritual, a ritual designed to harness the power of the ancient gods, to bend the very fabric of the universe to the will of those who controlled it. This ritual, however, didn't just tap into cosmic power. It tore at the very essence of reality itself, unraveling threads of existence and awakening something far older, something that Thor had been unknowingly bound to. This journal entry made it clear. Thor's resurrection wasn't a gift. It was a result of a chain of events that he himself had triggered long ago. But as I pieced this together, something even darker began to unfold. A shadowy figure I had been trying to trace for weeks finally made their move. An individual who had been connected to Jane's disappearance and had links to several of Thor's enemies. This figure, known only as a harbinger, had been a ghost in the system, pulling strings from behind the scenes, manipulating events that led to Thor's return. They had always been in the background, whispering in the ears of gods and mortals alike, and their influence had somehow extended into the deepest corners of Thor's past. But just when I thought I had a lead on their identity, something else happened. The data I had gathered was erased. Every file, every clue, vanished without a trace. And with it, My trust in the people around me began to crumble. I was no longer sure who I could trust or if anyone was telling the truth. Everyone had their own agenda, Thor, Jane, even those closest to him, and I had become entangled in a web of lies, half-truths, and hidden motives. As the days passed, the pressure mounted. I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was always a step ahead of me, keeping me from finding the answers I needed. And then, just when I thought I had reached the end of the line, a new threat emerged, one that brought everything into sharper focus. A shadowy group, hidden within the highest echelons of the Asgardian courts, reached out to me. They had been watching me, studying my every move. They didn't threaten me directly. They didn't need to. Their message was clear. Stop now. If you don't, you will never walk away from this. Their words lingered in my mind as I realized something horrifying. Whoever was behind Thor's return behind the storm was not just manipulating the past. They were controlling the future. And as the pieces fell into place, it became undeniable. The storm wasn't just Thor. It was coming for all of us. The tension had been building for days, but I hadn't fully realized just how deep I was in it until that night. It was well past midnight when the knock on my door came, soft at first, but persistent. My heart skipped a beat as I walked slowly toward the door, unsure of who or what was waiting for me on the other side. I wasn't supposed to be afraid. I had been digging into a mystery so vast, so tangled, that fear should have been a distant memory by now. But the closer I got to the truth, the heavier the weight of it all felt. I thought I could handle the uncertainty, but standing there, listening to the quiet knock, my mind couldn't shake the feeling that this was different. This wasn't an ordinary knock. I opened the door, but no one was there. Only a small black envelope sat on the welcome mat, half buried in the shadow of the frame. I bent down, hesitant, and picked it up. There was no address, no name, no clue to who had left it. Just a simple message inside, written in bold red letters that immediately sent a chill down my spine. We see you. Stop digging, or it will be the last thing you do. That was all. The message wasn't just a warning. It was a promise. My pulse quickened and a knot tightened in my stomach. Someone, somewhere, was keeping a much closer eye on me than I had realized. This wasn't just a game anymore. I wasn't dealing with a faceless conspiracy or a mystery anymore. This was personal. As if to confirm my worst fears, something strange happened the next morning. I was meeting with a trusted source, someone who had been working with me behind the scenes to uncover more about Thor's resurrection. We'd been in contact for weeks, exchanging information, piecing together the clues that had been hidden for so long. But when I arrived at our usual meeting spot, he was gone. No sign of him. No note. His car was parked just outside, but he wasn't inside. I called his phone, but it went straight to voicemail. I called again and again, and each time, the same dead silence. It felt like he had just vanished into thin air. I felt a sinking feeling in my chest as I realized this wasn't just about Thor anymore. This was about me. Whoever had sent that message last night had made it clear. I was next, and this time they were playing for keeps. I spent the rest of the day on edge, constantly looking over my shoulder, always feeling like someone was watching. My thoughts became erratic, the noise in my head unbearable. I tried to contact others who might know something, Jane, Thor's allies, even Sif, but everyone seemed unreachable. It felt like the entire world had been swept into silence. Every call went unanswered, every email undelivered, and then the phone rang again. This time, it was a number I recognized, a restricted number I had once traced back to one of Thor's old contacts. It was her Valkyrie. The voice on the other end was shaky, almost frightened. Get out, now. You're in more danger than you realize. You've uncovered something that's meant to stay buried. If you don't stop now, you won't make it out alive. The line went dead, just like that. My hands were shaking as I held the phone, trying to process what had just happened. Valkyrie had always been a warrior, fearless in the face of danger. And now she was afraid. The urgency in her voice echoed in my mind, but I didn't know where to go, who to turn to, or what to trust anymore. I had been caught in a web so intricate, so carefully constructed, that I could feel the threads pulling tighter with every step I took. Someone was manipulating this entire situation, pulling strings from the shadows, and I was walking right into their trap. My thoughts raced, trying to put together the pieces, the warning messages, the disappearances, the cryptic words from Thor's doppelganger. Nothing added up, but it was clear that every piece of this puzzle led back to the same conclusion. Whoever or whatever had brought Thor back wasn't finished yet. They were just getting started. I decided to head back to my apartment, hoping that I could at least regroup and think things through. But as I stepped into the elevator, something unexpected happened. The doors closed behind me, and for a moment, the space felt too small, too tight. Then, without warning, the elevator jolted to a halt, the lights flickering. The emergency button didn't work. My pulse quickened as the darkness seemed to close in around me. I wasn't alone. I could feel it. Someone was in here with me. I spun around, my eyes scanning the darkness, but saw nothing. The air grew thick with tension, and I could almost hear my heartbeat pounding in my ears. "You shouldn't have come," a voice whispered from the shadows. It was low, menacing, and unmistakably familiar. I reached for my phone, but before I could react, the elevator lights flickered one last time before plunging into complete darkness. I was trapped, utterly and completely alone. The silence was suffocating, and in that moment, the only thing I could hear was my own breath, shaky and rapid. My mind screamed for clarity, but every thought seemed clouded by panic. How had they found me so quickly? Who were they, and what did they want? The fear settled in my bones, making every muscle tense. There was no escape this time. The deeper I got into the mystery, the more dangerous it became. And now it was coming for me, too. Just when I thought I couldn't feel more lost, when the darkness in the elevator seemed like the perfect metaphor for how deep I was sinking into this mess, something happened that completely shattered my understanding of everything. The elevator doors suddenly opened, but not to the relief I was hoping for. Instead, I was face to face with someone I thought I'd never see again, Jane Foster. But this wasn't the same Jane I had known. Her eyes were cold, distant, and her face showed no trace of the warmth that used to define her. In fact, there was something about her that felt entirely alien, like she was a stranger wearing her skin. "Why are you here?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper, fighting against confusion and rising panic. The woman in front of me was still Jane, but she wasn't herself. She wasn't the person who had once been a beacon of hope, a partner who stood by Thor through thick and thin. She was different now, and it terrified me. Jane didn't answer right away. Instead, she stepped into the elevator, her eyes scanning me up and down with an almost clinical detachment. "I told you to stop," she finally said, her voice low but steady. "But you didn't listen. None of you ever listen." The words hung in the air like an accusation. But before I could say anything, she reached into her bag and pulled out a small, ornate device that looked like it had been crafted centuries ago. My heart skipped a beat. I had seen this symbol before, etched into the ancient ruins Thor had once told me about. It was tied to something far older than Asgard, a civilization that predated even the gods. "I should have told you sooner," Jane continued, her voice cracking just slightly as she spoke. "But it's too late now. Everything you've been chasing, everything you thought was a mystery, was never what it seemed." My head spun as she revealed a shocking truth that turned everything on its head. She was not the person I thought she was, and neither was Thor. In fact, none of the stories we had been told, the legends we had built our entire understanding of the gods on, were real. Thor's resurrection wasn't a mere mistake or accident. It was part of a much larger plan, one that had been set in motion long before any of us had realized. And Jane had known it all along. "The Thor you've been chasing," she said, almost with a bitter laugh. "That's not him. That's never been him." She paused, allowing the words to sink in, and then added, "He's not who you think he is. None of them are." I stood there, frozen, my mind racing to comprehend what she was saying. Thor had returned from the dead, but this wasn't just some divine return. It was a result of an ancient betrayal, one that Thor himself had been a part of, unknowingly or not. Jane's voice dropped to a whisper. "The real Thor died long ago. What you're seeing now, what you've been calling his return, is something far darker, something that was never supposed to happen. I wanted to scream, to demand more answers, but my voice failed me. Everything I thought I knew had been turned upside down. The stakes weren't just about uncovering the truth anymore. The truth had changed, and I didn't know if I could handle it. I didn't know if I was even capable of understanding what she was telling me. There's a reason why people have been disappearing, Jane continued, her voice growing more urgent, as if she couldn't contain the knowledge any longer. The world you think you live in, it's collapsing, and you're right in the middle of it. She seemed to hesitate, and I could see the conflict in her eyes, a woman torn between loyalty to an old friend and the guilt of knowing the terrible price that had been paid to keep this secret hidden. Everything you've seen, all the clues, all the warnings, it's because something was meant to stay hidden. And Thor, the god you think is your hero, is at the center of it all. He's not just alive. He's part of something far more dangerous. And you, her voice faltered for just a moment before she regained composure. You were never meant to find out. The weight of Jane's words hung in the air like a suffocating fog, and I felt every bit of it. I couldn't move, couldn't think clearly, just stood there, overwhelmed by the magnitude of everything she'd just revealed. But the longer I stayed in that moment, the more I realized the truth wasn't just terrifying. It was impossible. How could I continue digging when everything I thought I knew had been a lie? How could I confront Thor, the hero I had once idolized, when he was at the center of all this darkness? And what about Jane? A woman I trusted implicitly, someone I believed had always been a force for good. She wasn't just part of this conspiracy. She had been actively hiding it from me. Just as I was processing the storm of thoughts in my head, my phone buzzed in my pocket, snapping me out of the daze. It was a message from someone I hadn't expected to hear from, Valkyrie. My heart raced as I read the message. Meet me at the docks. You need to hear this before it's too late. The urgency in her words sent a chill down my spine. Whatever was happening, whatever game was being played, it was far from over. And now I was being dragged deeper into it. I didn't hesitate. I knew I couldn't trust anyone anymore, but Valkyrie had always been an ally, a warrior who had fought beside Thor in ways that I could never fully understand. If she was reaching out, then something had shifted. Something was about to break wide open, and I wasn't sure if I was ready for what that meant. When I arrived at the docks, the moonlight barely illuminated the empty stretch of water and the rusted ships docked along the pier. It felt like the entire world had gone silent, as though even the night itself was holding its breath. I moved cautiously toward the shadows, every step feeling like it could be my last. Valkyrie stepped out from behind a cargo container, her face tense, her eyes scanning the horizon as if she were waiting for someone. She didn't speak at first, just nodded for me to follow her. She led me into a dark alleyway, away from the main street, and finally turned to face me. There was no longer the sense of camaraderie I had once felt with her. She seemed colder, distant, like a person who had been consumed by something darker than I could understand. And that's when she dropped the bombshell that shattered everything once again. "You're being played," Valkyrie said, her voice low but firm. "You think it's all about Thor, but it's not. It never was. The gods aren't who they say they are. And neither are you." The words hit like a punch to the gut. What was she talking about? What do you mean by that? I asked, my voice shaking despite my best efforts to stay calm. She didn't answer right away, just looked around, as though she was checking for someone or something else. Finally, she pulled out a small device from her jacket, a sleek black box with strange symbols engraved on it. "This," she said, handing it to me, "is a key to understanding everything. But be careful, because once you open it, there's no going back." I stared at the box in my hand, feeling the weight of it, both physically and emotionally. This was it, the moment that could either solve the mystery or bury me in a pile of lies too heavy to escape. But Valkyrie wasn't finished yet. Her expression grew darker as she spoke again, each word carrying the weight of something far worse than I could have imagined. "You think the truth is what you're seeking," she said, her voice softer now, almost regretful. "But truth isn't always what it seems. I made a choice, just like everyone else. A choice that I can't take back. And so did you." "What are you talking about?" I pressed, desperate for clarity, but she just shook her head. "You're in the middle of something bigger than you realize." You're asking questions you don't want the answers to. If you open that box, if you continue down this path, you'll be forced to make a choice that could destroy everything. My mind reeled, my chest tightening as I struggled to make sense of it all. Valkyrie, who had always been a pillar of strength, a fighter with a clear sense of right and wrong, was telling me that I was about to make a decision that would tear everything apart. But what was the decision? Was it Thor? Was it Jane? Was it me? What was my role in all of this? As if on cue, I felt a shift in the air, a change in the tension that hung between us. Someone was coming, and they weren't coming alone. I could hear the sound of footsteps approaching fast, and instinctively, I reached for the weapon I had stashed in my bag. But Valkyrie stopped me with a firm grip on my wrist. "Don't. It's too late," she whispered urgently. "You've already made your choice by being here." Before I could ask her what she meant, a familiar figure stepped into view. Thor. But this was not the Thor I had been chasing. His eyes were cold, devoid of the warmth I once saw in him. He wasn't even human anymore, not in the way I thought he was. "You should have listened," he said, his voice low, almost robotic. "You're part of this now, whether you want to be or not." And just like that, the world as I knew it started to crumble around me. Thor wasn't a hero. Valkyrie wasn't a friend. Jane wasn't someone I could trust. And me? I wasn't just a bystander in this war. I was a piece in a game I didn't even understand. The choice wasn't whether or not to dig deeper. The choice was whether I could live with the truth once it all came to light. The message felt like a punch to the gut, and for a brief moment, everything stopped. "You're not the only one there watching." The words echoed in my mind, and I couldn't shake the feeling that the wolves were closing in. Whoever had sent it knew something I didn't, and that was terrifying, because they weren't just watching me. They were watching all of us. I turned to Valkyrie, who stood frozen in place, her eyes wide with something I couldn't quite place. Fear? Regret? Whatever it was enough to make her look like she was just as trapped in this nightmare as I was. "What does that mean?" I demanded, my voice tight with panic. "Who's watching us?" Valkyrie opened her mouth to answer, but before she could speak, Thor moved forward, stepping into the dim light that barely touched the dark alley. His eyes were ice cold, a far cry from the god I had once believed in. He was no longer the protector of the realm. He was something else now, something far darker. And in that moment, everything I thought I knew about him shattered into pieces. "You still don't get it, do you?" His voice was low, dangerous, and I could feel the gravity of his words weighing on me. "You never did." The sudden shift in his demeanor made my heart race. He wasn't just a god of thunder anymore. He was a force to be reckoned with, dangerous, calculating, and in control of something that reached far beyond what I could understand. This wasn't about resurrection, about Thor returning from the dead. It was about something so much more insidious, something that had been planned for years. And we were all just pawns in a much bigger game. "You think you're chasing the truth," Thor continued, his voice growing colder with every word. "But the truth is, you've been a part of the plan all along. Every decision you made, every step you took, it's all been part of the bigger picture. And now," he paused, taking a slow, deliberate step toward me. "Now there's no way out." I felt a chill run through me, the weight of his words settling like an anchor in my chest. What was he talking about? What plan? And why did I feel like the walls were closing in faster than I could escape? Then, the most unexpected thing happened. Valkyrie, who had been standing by my side, my ally through all of this, stepped back, her face hardening. She wasn't on my side. Not anymore. "He's right," she said, her voice betraying no emotion. "It's too late to turn back. You're already in too deep." I couldn't process what I was hearing. The betrayal stung more than I could have imagined. Valkyrie, the warrior who had always been loyal, was working with Thor all along? Had I really been that blind? Had I been manipulated the entire time? "You've been chasing ghosts, chasing a version of Thor that doesn't even exist anymore," Valkyrie continued, her voice now a mix of frustration and resignation. "You think this is about resurrection, about bringing him back to life. But it's bigger than that. Thor's return? That was the signal. A signal to start the next phase of the plan." "What plan?" I asked, my voice almost breaking as the tension in the air built to unbearable levels. What the hell is going on here? Valkyrie's expression hardened, and I could see the guilt in her eyes. But it wasn't enough to stop her from speaking the truth that had been hidden from me for so long. The world isn't what you think it is. It never was. And you've been part of it from the beginning. As her words hit me like a freight train, it all started to click into place. The sudden disappearances, the messages, the cryptic clues, the feeling that we were being watched. It was all connected, and I had been a part of it without even realizing it. But now, I could see the scope of conspiracy. This wasn't just about Thor's return. It was about control, about manipulating everything, everyone, and we were just the latest pieces in a game that had been going on for centuries. Before I could say anything else, a loud crash echoed through the alley, followed by the sound of footsteps running in our direction. My heart raced. Someone else was coming, and they weren't here to help. "We need to move," Thor said, his voice calm but urgent. "They know you're here now, and they're coming for you." I didn't hesitate. Every instinct told me to run, but there was nowhere to go. We were surrounded, trapped between the shadows of the docks and the looming figure of Thor, who had just revealed that he was part of something much larger than any of us could comprehend. There was no turning back now. Valkyrie had already made her choice, and I could see the decision in her eyes. There was no more loyalty left. She was as trapped in this as I was. But she had already picked her side. "We'll have to fight our way out," Valkyrie said, her voice steady despite the chaos building around us. But I couldn't bring myself to move. The shock of betrayal, the sense of urgency, the understanding that we were all part of something that was far beyond our control, it paralyzed me. And as the footsteps grew louder, as the shadows closed in around us, I realized that the truth wasn't just dangerous for me. It was dangerous for everyone. And the more I learned, the more I realized there was no easy way out of this. The stakes were higher than I could have ever imagined, and I had no idea who I could trust anymore. We were out of time, and as the first figure stepped into the alley, I knew one thing for sure. There was no escaping this. We had to face it head on, or die trying. The alley was dark, the air thick with tension. As the footsteps grew closer, I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, each beat echoing louder than the last. Valkyrie had already drawn her weapon, ready for whatever was coming, but I could tell she wasn't fully prepared for what was about to happen. Neither was I. Thor stood silently behind us, his cold, calculating gaze never leaving the shadows as the footsteps drew near, and I couldn't help but wonder if this was all part of his plan, or if he, too, was just a pawn in something even bigger. Everything had unraveled so quickly, and I still couldn't see the full picture. Then, the figure emerged from the darkness, a silhouette at first, then fully stepping into the faint light. I froze. The man in front of us was someone I hadn't expected to see, someone I thought was long gone. It was Loki. For a split second, everything inside me stopped. My mind raced, trying to process the impossible. Loki, the god of mischief, the very one who had pulled the strings behind so many of the events that had unfolded, the one I had been hunting, the one I had believed was a far-off threat, was right here, in front of me. But why? Why now? And how had he been involved in all of this? Loki's eyes glinted with that same mischievous spark that I had come to hate, but there was something else there now. Something darker, more dangerous. He didn't look like a villain. He looked like a man who had come to claim what was his. "You're too late," he said, his voice low and mocking. "You always were." I felt my stomach drop. The weight of his words hit me harder than I expected. Loki wasn't just some trickster in the background. He was the one pulling the strings all along. The resurrection of Thor, the messages, the betrayals. It had all been part of his grand design. It wasn't Thor's return that mattered. It wasn't even about Valkyrie's secret alliances or my own involvement. Loki had been orchestrating this entire thing, using Thor's death and rebirth as a distraction, manipulating everything to set his final plan into motion. Valkyrie stepped forward, her face a mixture of anger and resignation. "Loki, you're making a mistake. This isn't your game anymore." He smirked. "Oh, but it is. It's always been my game, Valkyrie. You were just too blind to see it. All of you were." He turned his gaze toward me, and I felt a chill run down my spine. And you, my friend, you were the final piece I needed. I knew you'd come looking for answers. I knew you'd uncover the truth. But now you're too far in. I didn't understand. What truth? What was he talking about? You think it's over? Loki's voice turned darker, more menacing. You think you got it all figured out? You're in way over your head, and there's no way out. The words hung in the air, and suddenly everything clicked. Thor's return, Valkyrie's betrayal, the constant feeling of being watched. It was all leading to this moment. But even as it all came together, a sense of dread washed over me. If Loki was in control of this, if he had been the one behind everything, then nothing was what it seemed. Nothing was safe. And I was at the heart of it all. As Loki stepped forward, the ground beneath me seemed to shift, like the very reality we stood in was beginning to warp. I stumbled back, my eyes darting between Valkyrie and Thor, both of whom stood in eerie silence, as though they were awaiting the inevitable. But it wasn't just Loki that I had to worry about. It was a truth that had been hidden from me for so long. Then, the unexpected happened. A sudden, blinding light flashed from the alley entrance. Someone had entered the scene, someone I hadn't heard approach. My heart stopped as a familiar face emerged from the light, a face I thought I would never see again. It was Jane, but she wasn't the person I remembered. Her eyes were cold, distant, and there was a dangerous air about her now. She didn't look like the woman I had trusted. She looked like someone who had become a part of the very darkness that had consumed everything I thought I knew. "I told you to stop digging," Jane said, her voice steady but laced with an undeniable threat. "But you didn't listen, and now you've made a choice." A choice? What was she talking about? My mind raced, trying to piece together the significance of her words. And then, the final revelation hit me like a lightning strike. Loki hadn't just orchestrated Thor's return. He had used me. I was never meant to uncover the truth. I was part of the plan all along. I had been bait, a distraction, a tool in a much larger scheme. Thor's resurrection wasn't just to bring him back. It was to serve as a catalyst for the chaos Loki had been planning for centuries. Jane, Valkyrie, and even Thor had all been complicit in this, working with Loki, not against him. I wasn't fighting for the truth. I had been playing into his hands the entire time. The realization hit me like a freight train, and for the first time, I saw the full scale of the conspiracy. This wasn't just about Thor. It wasn't just about the gods. It was about the destruction of everything I knew. Loki wasn't seeking power. He was seeking chaos. He was creating a world where nothing mattered, where everyone could be manipulated, and where the very foundation of reality itself could be torn apart. "You've made your choice," Jane repeated, her voice more forceful now. "The question is, are you ready to live with it?" The explosion was deafening, and for a moment, the world seemed to slow down, as though time itself was stretching, trying to give me one final moment to process everything. The last thing I saw before everything went dark was a twisted look of satisfaction on Loki's face. Then, everything was engulfed in darkness. The air was thick, and I could feel the weight of what had just happened. Was this it? Was this the end of it all? Had Loki's plan finally come to fruition, or was there still a sliver of hope left? When I woke, the world around me was silent, the kind of silence that presses against your ears and makes you feel like you're floating in another dimension. The ground beneath me was cold, the familiar sounds of the city distant and muffled. My head ached, and as I pushed myself up, I felt the weight of everything that had happened crashing over me. I wasn't dead. I wasn't sure what that meant, but I was still here, still breathing. But what now? I turned my head slowly, taking in my surroundings. The alley was gone, replaced by a barren landscape that stretched out in all directions. It wasn't real, at least not in the way I knew reality to be. This was something else, something in between. The battle wasn't over, but the end had come for something. The first person I saw was Valkyrie, standing a few paces away, her face unreadable. Thor was standing next to her, and Loki was nowhere to be found. I wanted to ask what had happened, what had truly unfolded in the moments I'd lost consciousness, but I couldn't bring myself to speak. It didn't matter. What mattered was that the game had changed. Whatever had been planned was now in the past, and I wasn't sure who I could trust anymore. Valkyrie finally spoke, breaking the silence. "It's over," Her voice was flat, tired, but there was something else in it, a faint echo of relief. "You did it. You stopped him." "Did I? Was it really over?" Loki was gone, but the aftermath of everything that had happened felt too vast, too complicated to resolve in a single moment. We had stopped the immediate threat, but what had we lost along the way? The truth we'd uncovered wasn't the kind of victory you could celebrate. There were no cheers, no applause, just a deep, unsettling quiet that left me with more questions than answers. Thor stepped forward, his expression still hard but with a flicker of something more human behind his eyes. "You did what none of us could," he said, his voice sincere. "You were the one who saw through the lies, through everything we thought we understood." I looked at him, wondering if I could believe him, if I could ever trust him again after everything that had happened. But as I looked into his eyes, I realized something. Thor had always been a warrior, a god who fought for what he believed in. But even gods could be deceived, could be manipulated. And in the end, maybe we were all just trying to find our way back to what we had lost. I stood there for a moment longer, the weight of it all sinking in. The battle had been won, but what had it really cost? In the end, Loki had wanted chaos, destruction, control over everything. And in some ways, he had succeeded. He had shown us that no matter how hard we tried to break free, we were all still pawns in a much larger game. But it wasn't over. Not really. There was still a world out there that needed saving. There were still people out there who needed to hear the truth. I knew my journey wasn't done. I couldn't go back to the life I once knew. There would be no easy answers, no clear path forward. But there was something in me now, something stronger than fear, stronger than doubt. I had faced the darkness, faced the truth, and I had come out the other side. Maybe that was the real victory. The sky above me was shifting, a subtle reminder that things were never as they seemed. I had learned that much. But there was one thing I knew for sure. The fight wasn't over. It had just begun. As I walked away, Valkyrie and Thor following behind me, I couldn't help but feel a strange sense of peace. I had survived. We had all survived. And for now, that had to be enough. But as I looked toward the horizon, something in the back of my mind nagged at me. Something wasn't quite right. The feeling of being watched, of the shadows lingering just outside my vision, hadn't gone away. Maybe it wasn't Loki who had been the true mastermind behind all of this. Maybe there was still something out there, something bigger, something waiting.